Released all the way back in 2017, Ark Survival Evolved is still one of the most visually impressive and memory-intensive games that I've ever played. However, these feats don't necessarily make for a quality game, and considering its mixed or average reception, how well does it do all these years later? Ark Survival Evolved is an open-world survival craft game, where you wake up in a domed habitat full of prehistoric creatures. Survival is tough as you manage your hunger and thirst while trying to avoid predators as you gradually build up your skills and gear to begin taming dinosaurs of your own. This progression is part of what makes this game great, but it's also what makes this game irritating to play. While you can ignore the game's endgame, getting there is one of the most egregious grinds I've ever come across. What isn't egregious is the aesthetics. This game looks gorgeous. While there are some graphical problems, they are mostly circumstantial. Everything else looks phenomenal, from the maps, to the dinosaurs, to the little bits of lore that you can pick up. This beauty does come at a cost, as this game can be tough to run, but if you can run it well enough, then there aren't many games that look better. Music is also pretty solid. The menu music is epic and sounds like something from the Hunger Games. In-game music is also pretty good, and the creatures and weapons sound fine. The voice work that is played during the lore pages is excellent, but I think the ass clap that you have when you poop in the game is a little too wet. While I can't speak about the online aspects, which may fix the grind issues I mentioned before, the solo gameplay is mostly good. There's a surprising amount of variation that you can employ by carefully leveling your character or just by adjusting the settings. Doing this can speed things up, such as resource gathering, or even adjust the level of creatures that you find in the wild. The survival aspects can be a bit tedious, especially on its default rating, but it's still better than other games I've played. But once again, a lot of the issues that you might have with this element can be tuned in the settings. Combat isn't the best, melee is simplistic, but can be extraordinarily powerful. Guns are okay, but the gunplay isn't the best, and the AI is fairly dumb, largely charging at you in a straight line without any variation. While there isn't really a story per se, there is an extensive lore and mystery as to why you are in the Ark to begin with. In order to find these details, you have to explore various arcs as well as fight the various bosses available. This is where the grind really rears its ugly head the most. Bosses, even on easier difficulties, can be quite difficult. This is because it requires taming and breeding dinosaurs in order to have any chance against these bosses. While this can be sped up in settings, it still requires tedious micromanagement of breeding pairs and baby dinos, even if you don't take the time to min-max stats. You have to breed because it's significantly faster than leveling up the dinosaurs through normal combat. But yet again, this can likely be overcome by increasing the stat increases through the settings, completely avoiding the breeding process altogether. While I love the fact that you can change just about everything, the length of time that's required to figure out what your ideal settings are just to make things tolerable doesn't really make for a great experience. It's also fairly accessible. While it has no way to change the language in-game, what really raises the accessibility is the extensive settings options. This will allow you to change just about everything in the game the way you want it to. This includes rebinding options for the mouse and keyboard, however there is no rebinding for the controller. Difficulty is also customizable, but I feel a lot of people could have difficulty completing their game on their own, even if they do decrease the difficulty. Ark is not only available on Steam and Epic, but is also available for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. However, this doesn't make it convenient, as this game is notoriously difficult to run, causing problematic console releases and powerful computers required to run it. The settings, while extensive, isn't always clear as to exactly what it's doing. for the specific item you might be adjusting. I can't say I've really found any bugs, but there are some minor graphical issues. You'll likely see it when you're on a flying creature and their wings briefly cover distant water. And of course, you can't forget the whopping 376 gigabytes of drive space this game takes up if you install all the DLC as well, keeping in mind that all of the DLC is free now. While you will be able to get this down to about 129 gigabytes with just the base game, the likelihood that you're going to have to uninstall other games or buy a new hard drive or SSD just to install this game is quite possible. Overall, I think the vast majority of Ark operates very well. From the taming of your first dino, exploring new areas, the tense struggle to stay alive, and keep the dinos that you've tamed alive is exhilarating. Combat is okay and enemies are difficult. The problems begin to show when you meet your inevitable doom to one of them. If you lose your dino or lose your gear, then you have to spend hours grinding again or get lucky and manage to get them back. I like a lot of what Ark Survival Evolved has to offer. However, when I play it, I can't typically play it for all too long before I hit an annoying wall and give up. I also feel that its hardware demands and difficulty issues can cut off a significant audience from enjoying the game. It is the hardest game I've ever had to place on my A scale, because it has really high highs, especially for the multiplayer aspects, but it also has really low lows. I feel that it gets a meh, but I could honestly understand if someone else would put it at any point on my rating system, which I feel lands it square in the middle.